and now they're having a go at the Batman series with a Kickstarter due to launch very soon, in the next week on Kickstarter. Going to show you, they've put out a digital demo, which is a really awesome way for you to get a look at the game in advance and decide if it's something that you're interested in. And I've got it here on Tabletop Simulator. They also have a version on Tabletopia, which is browser based and free to play if you don't have Tabletop Simulator. So we're going to look at what you get in that demo and talk about some of the features of the game and some of the differences from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle title if you are familiar with that. So looking at the game itself, just like in Ninja Turtles, it is tile based, usually taking place over 2 tiles. And in this case you can see we've got a mission set up with an outside street and a indoor area. There are 2 ways that you can play the game. You can either play it in what's called competitive mode, where you have one player taking the role of the villain, in this case the Joker, Harley Quinn, the hired guns and the enforcers, and they activate their forces through the use of an ability deck. There we go. It's the ability deck here, and if I just flip that over and have a look through it, you use these cards to be able to activate certain minions. So it tells you down the bottom what minion can activate, how many, and the abilities that they get when you activate, so you can choose who any of your forces is going to go. The play goes in a you go, I go format, with the villain going in between each of the hero players. And the game has these handy little summary references for you to be able to see where your deck sits, your discards, and your cards that are currently in play. And each time you deal new ones each turn, there are going to be cards that are going to fall off and go into the discard pile. Mechanically, the game otherwise plays very similar, though the villains have their own cards, usually for competitive play, that are slightly different to the AI or co-op mode. That is the other way to play the game that was introduced with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And if I load up the cooperative version of the mission, the cards for the enemies are now a little bit different. They now have default attack and block values, so you don't roll dice for them, you just use those static values, and they have targeting priorities telling you who that figure is likely to try and target and attack when they activate. We also get a nifty initiative deck so that you can draw a card, flip it over, and we know, okay, Harley Quinn's going first, then Jim Gordon, then Batgirl, then the enforcers, all of them will go, the Joker, Batman, Robin, and then the hired guns. And then next round we reshuffle that deck and away we go again. In terms of the heroes, there's a really clever dice sharing mechanic that the game uses to represent the abilities that your heroes have access to on a given turn. They do that by rolling these action dice, and then they get to arrange the dice so that they share the sidemost dice with the hero next to them. So in this case, if I chose to arrange these dice, say Robin here doesn't have any movement symbols, then I could change these dice around and I would share the movement symbol with Robin. And they give you little cardboard tokens here so that Robin, for instance, can change this one for a walk token to show that he's now got access to a movement icon when he comes to activate and take his turn. The bat here is a bit of a wild card. It lets you regenerate focus, which you use to reroll rolls, and it can potentially restore some health. But if Robin, say for instance, made it a shield to boost his defense, then Batman here could also gain the use of that shield when it is his turn. Your defense value is static, but you, for instance, if it would be 3, but if Robin shared a shield, your defense this turn would be 4, and you've also got on your own there 5. So you can have a lot of flexibility around your characters in terms of what they're going to do, whether they're going to be aggressive this turn and going into melee or range attacks, whether they're going to try and be quite tanky if you know that they are heading into an area where they're going to potentially take a lot of fire from enemies. However, you do have to work collaboratively. That's one of the things that makes the game really enjoyable to play, is that negotiation between multiple players of, well, what do you need? What can I give you? How can I make this work for our team? Each of the heroes does have their own abilities and perks as well. So for instance, Batman says, before you roll your dice, you can set one dice to anything you like that's not the bat symbol. Set it aside, roll the other dice, and the one you pre-chose must be your middle dice, so you can't share it. But it does mean that you can guarantee somewhat what you're going to be able to do that turn. Each character also has a ability deck that comes with them as well, and you can choose ability cards that you can take into battle. Some of these ability cards have particular costs up in the left hand corner, so for instance judo throw there, that takes a focus to be able to spend in that turn, but if Batman does that, he can play that card. It says he can choose an adjacent villain, move it to another empty space adjacent to him, and you get an attack +1, so that would be a melee strike, and if you hit them you stun them as well, which is a game effect. Attack +1 means that you take your base value in this case, which is 2 of Batman, and then you would add an additional battle dice to that. The battle dice are these funky ones over here that the heroes roll for attack and defense, and when playing competitive, the 5 versus 1 mode, the hero or the villain uses them as well. The AI villains don't. To make it quicker, they just use their set values. So in terms of that attack +1 that we talked about before, we'd be rolling 3 dice in total. And so in this case we have 3 hits that would come up, and Batman would compare that to the defense value of the target he's trying to hit. Maybe it's a hired gun, they've got a defense value of 2, so 1 wound would get through, and the life of that figure would go from 3 to 2. Obviously in the actual game you're not going to have counters on the figures themselves, but in the case of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for instance, they had pizza slices that you could use to mark health amounts next to individual figures. The game, in the demo, you get Batman, Robin, Batgirl and Jim Gordon. They all have their own different special abilities, they have their own different card decks. These are apparently the full card decks that these characters will have in the game. And you might look at some like Batgirl and Robin and say, well, they've only got 6 cards there, that's not that many. But wait, there's more. This is a Batman game. Instead of taking your full allotment of cards, so in this case Batgirl would normally be able to take 2 out of that deck of 6 into a battle with her, you can choose to replace a card with with 4 gadgets if you have the tag utility belt on your character. So that means she might take 1 ability card and she gets to take 4 gadget cards with her. These gadgets, these are very specific but potentially very powerful tools that you get to use once and then you discard them, unlike the skill cards that you can use again and again given that you pay the activation cost. So if you know you're going out into a situation where there's going to be Joker gas, for instance, the Smilex gas, you might really want to take some gas masks with your characters, which gives them the immune attribute when they use that, so that you can get into the area where the gas is, deal with it without becoming infected yourself. Likewise, the search goggles, if you know that there is a bomb, if your special action you want to take is to defuse a bomb, you can cut additional wires without penalty. And in this case, in this mission they've given you, the first one, there is indeed a bomb here, and it's got these funky little counters that you can shuffle up and allocate, and if you turn it over, it's the wrong one, the timer gets quicker, and each time you do it, you're losing at the end of each round as well, a timer comes off. So those goggles really can make a massive difference in trying to find the right one. And see, there I go horribly, I would have got blown up for sure. The game comes with scenario books, which are sort of comic book size. Again, another thing that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started. It gives you a description of the mission. So in this case it says that the bomb has a complexity level of 5 and a stack of 5 tick tokens. There's also a cake that's been poisoned, so you have to actually go to the cake and do an investigation action to find what antidote you need before you rescue the bystanders. It tells you for 5 versus 1 how much focus the villain has to be able to spend to reroll his dice, and what his hand of cards is going to be that he can have in his hand to choose from. The heroes win if they defuse the bomb and rescue the bystanders, so a lot more complex than Ninja Turtles, where it was just usually a case of go here, beat up these guys, and you'll win or get from one side to the other. The villain wins if the bomb explodes or if any hero gets knocked down unconscious and can't get up again. And it tells you what happens if the mission is successful or if it's a failure if the villain wins. And if it's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this might have potentially flow-on effects for future battles. It won't change what the battle is that you're going into, but you might have an advantage or a disadvantage going into the next one. And looking at the setup map here, it shows you the tiles, the layouts, where the enemies go, where the civilians go, and in this game there are quite a lot of civilians. And it also shows you the spawn points for the heroes, and you can see the coloured outlines show the different types of terrain. In this case, the steps, the trash can and the cars are difficult terrain that it's going to cost you extra movement to move through or over. It tells you in the bottom here how many figures there are of each enemy type, and if you're playing the competitive mode 5 versus 1, it tells you which villain card decks you need to draw from to be able to make those. It helps to get the balance of the scenario in terms of the number of activations and the types of skills right for that scenario. And it gives you a beautiful rundown of how many components you need as well, and how many initiative cards you need to put in there as well, because sometimes you will have certain enemies who will activate more than once in a particular round if they're particularly fast or numerous. In the demo you get 3 books, 3 campaigns to go through. So the first one is, as I said, that there's a club that they have put a bomb in and also paralyzed the bystanders. In the second one, the Joker's making a getaway and the goons are trying to buy him time, so you've got to try and fight your way through within a certain time to get there. And in the last one, there is a bomb, a time bomb in it, that you've got to be able to disarm before time runs out. And this is just the Joker. So in the final game there's going to be a huge range of characters. It's all based on the Batman animated series, so where you may see from the style, the art style, the characters, it's all the animated style. So that might be something you like, that might be something that maybe you're not quite as keen on, but there are a number of Batman options out there in terms of other miniature games that you could always sort of swap in miniatures if you like a different style, I guess. But you're going to see, obviously you've got Batman, Batgirl, Robin, Commissioner Gordon. There's Catwoman, who's a bit of a free agent, who you can sort of play on the hero side. And you're going to be up against the likes of Two-Face, the Penguin, Mr. Freeze, the Riddler, Scarecrow, Man-Bat, obviously the Joker and Harley Quinn. That's in the core Shadow of the Bat game itself. Also, they're going to be launching an expansion on the Kickstarter at the same time, which is it's called Arkham Asylum, and it gives you a new game mode called Clayface mode, which is kind of like a hidden traitor mode. So the idea is that you are in the Arkham Asylum, and assuming we're going to get some different towers perhaps with that, I don't know, we'll have to see when the Kickstarter launches, and you'll be up against a wider range of classic villains, Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, Hugo Strange, and there's even more obscure ones in there that I wasn't as familiar with, like Lockup and Clock King and Baby Doll, that they've started advertising on the IDW Games page recently over the last couple of weeks. But apparently the thing is that one of those people is actually Clayface in disguise, one of your players, and they can choose when they want to sort of try and turn the tables by revealing that they're actually Clayface and turning against the other players. So that has potential to be quite a cool little twist on this formula that they've already put together. And then apparently there's also a new Batman Adventures character pack that you can get as well, and some extra story packs. So it sounds like there's quite a lot of content here that's going to be offered. That the base game's got a lot in it. You know, when you look at the villains, we've just seen the Joker, but there's also going to be, like, you know, Two-Face, the Penguin, Mr. Freeze, Riddler, and Scarecrow, and presumably there's going to be additional campaign content for those characters as well, which you know, will provide a lot of replayability. But then these extra mission packs, you know, there's things like containing Nightwing, you know, and story packs like Mask of the Phantasm and Mystery of the Batwoman, being able to add new missions and characters as well, such as, hey, being able to play as Bruce Wayne in plain clothes. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how those work. Anything else I didn't cover across to you? Oh yes, that's right, Jim Gordon. I was going to talk about him. He is a bit different from the other characters, and that's because Jim Gordon is sort of like a control character, that he comes with minions of his own. And so he comes with 2 beat cops who he gets to move on his turn, and they don't use his action dice, but he can actually give them 2 specific icons each turn that they're going to do. So you might say, okay, you're going to move and shoot, and you're just going to shoot twice because you're already in a good spot. And Jim's got 10 skill cards in there, and some of those skill cards are actually being able to modify those beat cops who come with him. So there's, for instance, you can take a SWAT team, so it actually makes them more it makes them tougher, so they've got a higher defense. Or you can change them out for specific known characters like Montoya, and Harvey Bullock was the other one. Where is he? There. And so each of those is obviously at the cost of bringing one of your other skills, like for instance, you know, point blank, being able to use range strikes against adjacent targets, which is pretty handy if you're someone who has a lot of ranged icons like Jim Gordon does. Or you can choose to be upgrading those minions and standing back a bit more. And I played with, in my test playthrough I had Montoya and Bullock in there, and they actually were pretty hard for the villains to take down. They were definitely worth the cost that I put in, I've thought. So they made a pretty good little team. So that's an overview of the adventure game, the Batman adventure game there. It also has the rulebook info, which is looking really polished, given that the game is just going to Kickstarter there. There's an overview of some of the characters that you can expect to see in the base game itself, and that's not even talking about things like stretch goals or the expansion packs. And I think the game's come quite a long way from the very first Ninja Turtles game that was put out to then the reboot that we saw with City Full and Changes Constant. It really feels like there's an evolution in the design here, that it's becoming quite streamlined. And I know that with Ninja Turtles having a Mutanimals expansion coming up in the near future, that there's bound to be some of these things from Batman that have been developed that will find their way back into Ninja Turtles as well, which I really look forward to from there. Yeah, so what do you guys think? Is it something that you're interested in? Do you think that it's going to be as successful as Ninja Turtles? Are you looking forward to getting it? Let us know in the comments below, and if you have any other questions about the game that I can help to answer, then please do let us know down below. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you again next time.